Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dustin Cederholm. I'm the Digital Marketing Director for Fluid Advertising, and I'm very, very excited to be here on campus today at the University of Utah. We're here hosting with the Technology and Venture Commercialization, or TVC. With me I have Phil Case from Fluid Advertising, as well as Spencer Walker and Taylor Bench representing the TVC. So we're very excited to begin a four-part series presentation for you guys. This will be part one, and I'm going to turn it over really quickly to Phil, just to introduce himself briefly, and then we'll have Spencer and Taylor introduce themselves as well. So anyway, without further ado, Phil Case.
Good to be with you today. We began to form a little bit of a partnership beginning a few months ago, and this formalized into an ongoing educational series. And so Spencer and Taylor now are going to kind of queue up and help us understand somewhat of their vision at the TVC and where we hope to go with this webinar.
Great. Thanks, Phil. This is Taylor Bench. I work here at TVC. I'm the director of the Economic Development Team, which is the team that is more outward-facing in terms of our office and working with the market, entrepreneurs, investors, and subject matter experts. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as to what we do.
And I'm Spencer Walker. I'm on Taylor's Economic Development Team and have a dual role, also managing the Software Development Center here at TVC.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to turn the slides over to you just real quickly, and before I do that, I wanted to let you guys know that you can all be following along. We have members watching your live tweets, and so if you need to respond to either of us, you can reach us at GetFluid or at TechComOff. Please send any direct messages, and we'll try to answer your questions from there. Additionally, if you would like to ask any questions along the way, you can certainly comment to the host, and we will address that at the end of the presentation. Real quickly, I'll turn it over to our TVC members and Spencer, and please just go ahead and explain what we'll be looking forward to in this part.
Yeah, so what we really hope to accomplish today is to give you a couple of actionable items that at the end of the webinar and tonight, as you hopefully maybe look back at the slides, you can think of what can I do tomorrow with this information that I received today through this the first part of this webinar series. And really there are three takeaways that we'd like to have you come away with. The first would be an understanding and an introduction to the business model canvas that we use extensively here at TVC. The next would be the importance of having the correct players on your team in any venture or project that you're starting or expanding. And third would be, we would love to invite anyone listening to engage with TVC and also with Fluid, and we hope that throughout this series you will have some appreciation for technology, venture, and commercialization, and have a desire to come and help us and engage with our office.
And Spencer, can you just walk us through the overall goal? We understand what we're going to be looking forward to today, but what can people look forward to as the series goes on?
Yeah, great question. So today will be an introduction and an overview of kind of how TVC works, and also an introduction to you guys at Fluid. And then over the next couple of months, for parts 2, 3, and 4, we're going to dive into some case studies and some instructional material on how to take a concept to product. Then when we have that product, how to identify the first customer, and really go after them. And then once we've got our product and our first customer nailed down, how do we then scale into a profitable and successful venture?
And our hope is that this first one may be a little bit more of a classroom type approach and a little bit more kind of going through principles, but we really want to make this hands-on and kind of almost go into the lab, where webinars 2, 3, and 4 are very much focused on real-life examples and case studies, and we can be walking you through, both from Fluid standpoint and from TVC standpoint, successful companies and why they succeeded and the principles that they followed.
So we'll jump into the next section of this presentation, and just a little bit of background on TVC. So our office here at the university is charged with protecting and commercializing all of the intellectual property that's generated from the professors and researchers here at the university. So our office gets about 200 new inventions disclosed to our office every year from these professors and researchers doing their work here at the university. Our office then takes them through a process, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, to understand the answer to a couple of questions. One, should we patent it? And two, can we patent it? When we answer those two questions, then we start down the commercialization path and taking it through those 4 steps that Spencer just mentioned, going from concept basically to company and commercialization. So as we move forward, we just wanted to lay some groundwork with some of the language that we'll use in this webinar. If you have any questions during this webinar, please let us know if we're using words that may not make sense or in different ways than you typically use them.
So a couple of those words, and Taylor's already thrown out a couple, I'm glad that he did, because they're so familiar to us in this office that anytime we engage with people outside, depending on industry background or experience, we all come with our own education, and so we talk about scale, we talk about validation and milestones and stage gates. Really, what we try and do at TVC is quickly identify and put into a bucket any new technology that comes in. We want to determine kind of the readiness and how well developed it is when it comes in, so that we can know the people and the resources that need to be tied to that technology. And if you have questions throughout this webinar series, if there's a term that gets used that's unfamiliar, please just let us know, and we'd be happy to maybe give a little bit more background on what that means.
So jumping into that process, you can see on the slide here, the left side of it is kind of where the invention comes in. The right side is where money is generated, revenue is created. And we've broken this process up into 3 stages here at TVC. We call this process our commercialization engine, and it has 3 stages: the 2-stroke, the 4-cylinder, and the V8 side of the engine. And basically those are just maturity levels of the technology and the commercialization effort. As we go through these, we're answering those questions that are in those boxes there on the graphic. So the 2-stroke is, what is it? What is the opportunity? 4-cylinder is getting our hands dirty, really getting customer validation. The V8 is when it's starting to leave the nest and it's a standalone company or a license agreement. In the office here, we're trying to add a lot of value. Some of those additional resources where we feel we're adding value is listed there at the bottom, such as the software development center that Spencer runs and manages. That's just one element of the things that we do to help these companies stand up and work on their own, where we're going to be, for example, putting code together that is ready for the market rather than ready for a researcher's lab. So moving on, this slide is very complicated. It basically moves from the left to the right in a similar manner, but the green box and the blue box underneath is where our office is really capturing that additional value compared to other universities. The orange circles, the one on the left, is where typical universities are, where we will engage with a CEO or a management team or an entrepreneur as they start the commercialization process. But what we're trying to do is move that towards the right. And our office is trying to build that value and capture the value in the green and blue box for these new technologies. So we get a new invention and we have to do a lot of development and customer validation as we go through this process and really find out if there is a match for a solution that we've created here at the university. Is there a match out in the market where someone has a problem and they'd be willing to pay for our solution? So that process gets fairly complicated, and it's a rigorous process of customer validation and understanding what the market wants. And we use several tools and frameworks to do that work of customer validation and business model validation.
So Taylor mentioned tools that are used. One of them that we use internally is the business model canvas. There are several different canvases out there. We chose one and we've run with it. And the canvas, any canvas, is a way to visualize and to quickly make a hypothesis, a guess about any of these. For this particular canvas, there's nine segments that you're trying to hypothesize and identify your business model. The two that TVC tends to focus on would be customer segments and value propositions. That's really where we begin with any project, and try to understand who is that customer, and not just, to say the government, that's not a customer. Even to say, agriculture department, that's not a customer. We try and drill down into titles and names, and as soon as we've identified who those people are, then we try to do as much validation as we can to either validate or invalidate our hypothesis. And this is a great slide that you're seeing now that shows typically how validation works. You throw up a hypothesis and you go out and you ask the market, you ask that customer, we have this thing and it does X, Y, and Z, and is that what is helpful to you? And they come back and say, I need Y, but you should talk to my partner over here, and he might have other needs. And we go and talk to that person, and it's just this continual, what we're hoping to find in the market is a feedback loop. We're hoping to find the person that can become our ally, that understands we work with very early technologies, and that can say, you know what, I understand that, and I'm willing to help. And hopefully over time, you picture a marble spinning around the funnel, and over time, hopefully you're circling and closer and closer in refinement until you really nail it.
And Spencer, I just have to say, I think that's probably one of the more important things, whether it's for TVC's audience or just any business that is starting up or is even current, to make sure that you are continuing validating what you're doing and trying to get to that premium area that really your consumer is looking for and where that real need is. And we'll talk a little more later on the why of all of this, but I just can't agree with you more as far as the validation of the process and how valuable that is and what TVC can offer to your groups for that.
And I think what's exciting is not only is this applicable for startups, but really for any business. We try to spin out new service offerings frequently, and we continually go out and design and then test these in the market and look for that feedback loop. Sometimes we're able to do that with existing customers, which is nice, but our path often feels and looks like this. So I appreciate this graphic because that's really the reality.
Yeah, and there's a term that gets used that I've heard frequently, and it's entrepreneurship. And so that's an opportunity for anyone in any size company to be entrepreneurial. And if you're leading a new product line or new service line, there's this opportunity to get out of the office and to go and ask those prospective customers, this is what we're proposing, would it be helpful?
The process really does come down to an art. We've found there are some kind of more concrete elements, but the art in doing that customer validation is truly difficult because it's very easy to lead those customers into what you want to hear. And so our office focuses a lot on how to design those tests. It's very easy to say, I'm launching a new product, and would you as a customer really like this cool product? They're going to say yes, because you just told them it was cool. But that process of really understanding what they want and having them tell you before you have to plant the seed in their mind is where that art comes in, and it becomes fairly difficult to get a good read on the market and have a good pulse on the market. The next step for us in trying to accomplish that customer validation is understanding who is on the team. And so for us, there are critical pieces of that, who does this work, who does this customer validation work, and that's where we look outside of the university to try and engage with industry experts entrepreneurs, investors, whoever may be an influencer in that business or that new product line, we want to be engaging and talking to. One of the reasons that we are working with Fluid Advertising right now is exactly that. They're experts in their fields, and so we want to be able to work with them and understand what their capabilities are and how they can help the companies coming out of the university. Our office, we like to say, is a mile wide and an inch deep, so that's where we're trying to get some depth by engaging a lot of people in the community to fulfill multiple roles.
And one of the things I appreciate TVC so much for is that they're able to look holistically and not be so institutional, educationally minded. But I think that they realize the reality of businesses spinning out and succeeding is developing a lot of those relationships in the marketplace and being able to go to the right resources where they are very well known in the community, and they're able to connect to professional resources where they know once they get to a certain point, they need the work of attorneys, the work of accountants, the work of marketers, and whoever it may be. And so I appreciate kind of the realist business approach that TVC is really run more like a business, than kind of a association or not-for-profit or a university organization. I think they have such a good business mind.
Thanks, Phil. And Taylor for that. I think today maybe we're 2 inches deep. So where do we go from here? Again, just to reiterate, over the next, this is a series that hopefully the concepts will build throughout the series. And I'm taking notes today as we talk about things that we can include and add to these slides that will be available after the fact, some links to helpful resources. And so today, we'll hear from Fluid and what they do with their customers and how they grow businesses.
Well, we are excited just to take a few moments, and we'll be brief, want to be respectful of your time, but as you think about traditional marketing, we think about those things that, Mad Men try to encapsulize in, their kind of sitcom. And so this next slide kind of shows, what you're typically familiar with. So people think of advertising, you think of magazines, newspaper, billboards, TV, radio, etc. And then, some flyer brochures as well as some guerrilla tactics. And all of those are true. And, people may ask, well, are those things still relevant? And the answer is, well, it depends. And it depends it depends where you're at as an organization. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. It depends if you're trying to reach a business versus a consumer market. And then also, there's, from a digital marketing sense, this, I think, will kind of help queue up as we think of this world now. Now enters digital marketing, everything from social to content to SEO to, SEM and email, et cetera. So there's a little bit more of a complicated mix of marketing channels than there were previously. Dustin, do you want to speak to kind of how these can potentially work together for an organization, kind of an omni approach?
Absolutely, and I think you're talking about the traditional and digital aspects of those together, and that really is something we're hearing a lot about at the moment. And what is the conflicting view is that traditional no longer works and that everything is moving to digital, everybody's on mobile, et cetera, but that's just simply not completely true. It's the combination of an omni-channel marketing approach, omni-channel meaning it's one message, one call to action, one goal across all of the different platforms, whether that's a billboard, radio, TV, extended to your website, landing page, social media, blog, any of, even to your apps, I guess, but just that you have the same look and feel across all of your different platforms. And that's something that consumers are really beginning to expect and is really adding to the authority and credibility of your business model. And so that's something that, again, coming back to really understanding your process and what you are embedding that is really the only way to reach an omni-channel approach and then help you decide which of these channels are best for you, whether it be on traditional or digital.
That's one of the nice things from the TVC perspective of having a group like Fluid, because we have so many different types of products. It's not often that a surgeon is going to go onto Twitter or social media to find out the medical device that he should be using in his in his next operation.
Or at least you'd hope not.
Well, yeah, it's not typical, I would say, yeah. And so having other means of marketing channels is really nice for that type of business. However, we have a software that comes out of the university that is geared towards students, and that one would be much more suited for a digital marketing and social media campaign. So that's, for us, that's a nice way of being able to use the more holistic approach.
And Dustin, one thing that I notice across all of these channels, and even with traditional marketing, is content. You know, content really does spill into each bucket and needs to be coordinated, and you still need quality content.
I couldn't agree with you more. In our opinion, content really is where it starts. In previous, it used to be, you know, SEO and how you had to do that. And people even now are saying SEO is dead. But ultimately, SEO has become a facet of content marketing. And how do you create a content piece that you can repurpose and divide up across all the different channels? I mean, for us, we often use these webinars, and we can create 20 plus content pieces from a single webinar, whether that turns into a video, infographics, social posts, et cetera, but really starting at the very beginning and strategizing what that content is and having that flow out into all the different channels that we're talking about here. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Content is queen, or excuse me, is king. Yeah, well, and they say, which makes SEO kind of queen. So the content definitely is kind of the overall umbrella at this point.
And it's interesting, you kind of lead me to this next slide, talking about developing a compelling story. It's interesting when we talk content, no one wants to just be, no one wants to be split up upon. And you don't want content for content's sake. Some of my favorite people to listen to, I was with a gentleman over the weekend going down mountain biking in Moab. And one of the reasons I just love being with him is he could tell you story after story after story, and they're all interesting. And almost every other phrase would begin, well, you know, let me tell you the story. And you knew that you'd be in for, you know, kind of a treat. And so for me, it's fun when people say, you know, I have a story I want to share, and that almost illustrates the point better than trying to simply tell somebody what to do. And so as you can tell a compelling story about your business or brand, I think that's what moves people to take action. There's a quote here that we have up that, you know, because there are so many choices among products and services and everything else. I mean, you used to go down the grocery aisle and you'd be able to buy a single or two different brands of toilet paper. Now there's 25. And it's true just about any other facet of our life. And so because there is such competition with globalization, where services or products seem comparable, people will almost always be drawn to those with a more compelling story. And that's why you look at some of the bigger brands like Under Armour or Nike or Apple, and what do they focus on in terms of their marketing and advertising? It's telling a great story. So step number one is to tell a great story. So how you do that, and we alluded to this earlier, is but really starting with why. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, he's got a fantastic book called Start With Why, and a TED Talk that you each should go listen to. It's about 12 minutes, but there's, even if that's too long, a cut down version is 4 minutes. And it does an incredible job talking about, most businesses can talk about what they do, and they can talk about how they do it. And that's where Taylor and Spencer talked about the really helping businesses refine themselves. But any business to succeed long-term and to grow to the Goliath, you know, proportions that you would want to, needs to have a firm understanding of why you exist. And that why is much more than to turn a profit, but it's really to, whether it be to change the world or put a man on the moon or be the most innovative company or whatever that might be, but understanding the why behind an organization is key. Why Fluid exists is because we're passionate about helping businesses accelerate their growth. That's it, period. And because of that, we do a lot of things that help businesses do that, and that's kind of our what and, you know, how we differentiate ourselves.
From the university perspective, that's critical. The why is a lot of the reason that these professors are doing their research and coming up with these new inventions. And oftentimes we just see that money will follow impact, and that impact is based on the why.
And I just have to say, as we have these conversations, we really are trying to bring you value that you can put into use tomorrow. And with that, that's one thing. Go to your website right now And if it's all about your product and your features, it's not telling the story that you really want to. You need to put yourself in the shoes of your consumer, and why are they tearing their hair out? And what does that narrative sound like? And that's what your website needs to become. And so that's a immediate step that you can go and analyze. You don't have to change everything tomorrow, but just even beginning that conversation and talking with people. How do we change this? How do we look at ourselves collateral? What are we really selling? And if you're selling features, you're probably not selling the story that really would move people to act.
On the next point, as we talk about a brand, and as you begin to construct a brand from the ground up and build a brand around, a proven business concept as you work with TVC, a brand ultimately is an emotional connection. The reason I own an iPhone is because I think it's the most superior technologically advanced device and smartphone there is out there. I actually don't believe that. But I do think it's cool, it's hip, and it's fun, and it connects with the rest of my ecosystem. And I'm emotionally attached and connected to Apple. And it's interesting, as we think about a brand, what composes that is a compelling story and a message, the visual elements, the personality, and who you portray yourselves as a brand, as well as those products and services.
So Phil, if you think back to Taylor's slide about our work at TVC and how we try and take things from concept to company, how early does brand come into that picture?
I think anytime, there's two parts of a brand. There's the internal culture, and you want to internally begin building brand among your employees first, and that's critical. And so that may not even come in shape of a logo or come in shape of a fancy website. That might just be of what is our culture, what do we stand for? And that almost sometimes happens organically, but you want to be intentional about it. But then the second point that you need to be really strongly thinking about what that brand is and how you portray it out to the marketplace is when you try to start attracting your very first set of customers. And we know that there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, and your path to market might be a little circuitous, which is fine. But at least beginning to have something to say, we are and we stand for this. And you're going to refine that 25 times 12, which is fine. But at least you're putting something out there and you're testing it. And so you can actually test your marketing message at the same time you're testing your product message and kind of say, hey, what's working? And then refine and learn from there.
Cool.
And I would say that alone is probably where you really want to start, because that's the passion. And if you're not really passionate about what you're trying to do, then you may not understand what your offering is. And so you really need to establish what is that base culture. What am I doing and how am I changing something? Why is this important to me? Or else down the road, if it gets harder and harder, it's going to be harder and harder for you to keep moving forward with your company. But if you have that passion, there pretty much nothing can stand in your way.
And I think where you have competition in the market, those companies that really have that passion and, like you said, Phil, intent, I think customers, they pick up on that. And so if I have 25 different kinds of toilet paper and I know that there's intent and passion there, then that's the one you go with.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and this spills over. In fact, I wanted to just share a couple of fun examples. So we're familiar with Creamies, a fun, national now, but Utah phenomenon. And this slide says, the guy who said you can't buy happiness must have been shopping for cabbage. And it's very simple, but it tells a story. And you look at that, and you look at that kid, and it connects with you emotionally. It kind of, it's kind of a little bit of a, recall back to when you were a kid and just enjoying a creamy on the porch. And so, I think this does a good job of capturing that kind of brand message and story. A couple of others. This is one done for the Copper Canyon, a restaurant downtown at the Radisson. And as you look at this, this is a pound of meat stuffed with sauce, bacon, and cheese within that pound, and then baked together. And, the thought here is eating this will leave you with the same sentiments of those who finished their first marathon: pride, satisfaction, the overwhelming feeling that you may throw up. And so for us, this is a fun way of telling kind of this story and helping this brand kind of express itself. Two more that we'll share. Climate, they're a national retailer, manufacturer that retails throughout the country. And this simply says you wanted somewhere with an outdoor pool, wish granted. And as you look at that, you don't have to have too many words to look at their 10, which is almost, somewhat secluded in the distance and think, wow, I want that. And then lastly, with this same brand, you know, the message is simply stay in a 5,000-star hotel. And as you think about some of these messages and the feelings they evoke, if they connect with you, that means that we did our job. And you as a company, these are the type of sentiments that you want to be creating. Even from the get-go, your marketing, it may not be as dialed in as some of these are that you'll get to maturation down the road, but you do want to try to connect with people emotionally, because in the limbic portion of the brain, the most primitive part of the brain is where people make decisions. And people can't express those feelings in words. And so when they say, well, I just felt right, that's why I bought that product. Sometimes it isn't always logical, which is why in marketing we want to communicate emotion. So we're going to move to a couple of other points a little bit more quickly. But as you tell your story, you need to understand your buyers, and you need to map that journey and that experience. And this is just a brief example we'll share. As you do this right, you'll get data around you know, the type of demographics that you're seeking to serve, whether it be B2B or B2C, their interests, their goals, their pain points, the key words and buzzwords, their behavior trends, and all of these can kind of be written up and I think you know, put together in such a way that they can be readily used to not only develop campaigns but know how to speak to customers. And then that, of course, kind of ties to this funnel of awareness, consideration, intent, purchase, loyalty, and advocacy. So as you think about content now in the future, as we just spoke of that, how do you tell that story at those initial, you know, that awareness dating stage to actually purchasing a product and beyond? So the third point of just what's interesting with technology today is that you don't have to just broadcast out a singular message and hope that people resonate with it. You can personalize so much through technology today. Marketing automation is a fantastic tool, one of many. If it's something you haven't heard of before, you should go look it up. Dustin, do you want to just speak to some of these key points on personalization?
Yeah, and I just wanted to address personalization first off because it is becoming so important and almost so expected. The big brands that we've mentioned before are sending you emails, you know, with personalized subject lines, and that's gone so far, and we're pretty accustomed to that. But they're now offering you welcome back messages on their websites with the product that they want, that you've recently purchased, or a related product on their homepage, and it's dynamically changing based on your behaviors. And they're doing that with retail products, but also in the B2B space. If they can understand, you know, your company size, the entire site can change, and you can dynamically insert different content all across devices and across different platforms, and it really makes a consumer feel as though you know them and you're talking directly to them. In this age of banner blindness and email scrubbing, where we're just deleting mass amounts of email as soon as we wake up in the morning, we really need to find a way to cut through all of that noise. And personalization is really the one way to do that. And in order to do that, there are some specific tools out there, marketing automation being one of them. And I think we'll explain to you in a little bit greater detail what marketing automation is and how it functions for you.
Just one note on that from the TVC side, that personalization is critical when we're trying to figure out if there really is a market for a new invention. So if you have a new invention and you're thinking about putting a business together, it's very easy to go out and find, oh, the software market is a $1 billion market, and all I need is 0.1% of that, and I've got a successful business. Bringing that back to the personalization and saying, okay, who are my first 5 customers going to be? Who are the buyers? And trying to really understand, I mean, you've got to know what those customers smell like before you can get into the market. So you have to know them so well. So that personalization also goes for when you're ideating and creating your new business, you have to know the customers, not just that there's a $1 billion market out there.
Great point. Great point.
Fantastic point. So quickly, just what is marketing automation? And so here we can see the definition of marketing as offered by Gleanster. But really, in a nutshell, marketing automation is taking all the different platforms that you have, Facebook, email, blog, social, SMS, and combining it into one central platform and being able to then distribute information based off of user behavior. And what that really means is when somebody comes to your website, you are able to now track them and track their different behaviors and then serve up different pieces of content. And based on their reaction to those pieces of content, you can then slow the process of how much you're talking with them. You can increase the how much you're speaking with them. And you're ultimately trying to personalize each and every experience in a platform that allows you to be more efficient with fewer hands. And so right now, when you're logging into 5, 6, 7 different platforms, it's very difficult to manage, it's very manual, and marketing automation centralizes that so that one person can actually monitor the entire program, but at the same time, it's shooting out emails based off of how they're reacting to certain things, or it's serving up a case study or a white paper or something that may be relevant to them in real time. And then the flip side of it is what we've kind of been talking a little bit about in the past, but the marketing side. And marketing refers to the new alignment between sales and marketing. And so this is really the bridge where marketing can send triggers to sales to say, this person has been on your website 5 times in the last 5 days. They're obviously very interested in something. Maybe you should call them. And so it's going to send that trigger to the sales team to assist marketing. And so where we've been siloed for so long with marketing doing its thing and hopefully warming a lead and sending it over, and then sales receiving that lead and hopefully responding in enough time that it's still warm, there's just such a disconnect between that. Now the two are actually watching what the other is doing, and between the departments, we're actually creating an omni-channel customer service approach. More than just the messaging, but just the way that your company, your website, your sales team, your customer service team, and your executive team are all actually responding to, referrals and different traffic and all kinds of different things. But it just makes a company seem so put together and as though they really are taking care of you as an individual. And so that provides authenticity and trust yet again. And so that's kind of what marketing automation does. There are programs, many different programs, and we are able to kind of suggest which ones are good fits for different businesses because there are specific platforms depending on what, if you're B2B, B2C, e-commerce, et cetera. And so you do need to be selective with that kind of a thing.
Wonderful, thank you. And then as you're doing all of these things, and if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, we'll share this with you. This last note on accelerating your growth. These things can be done in stages. Not everything needs to be addressed at once. In fact, this next slide here kind of demonstrates that as you as an organization grow, sorry, there's a better view for it. The next slide. There's a better view for it here. As you as an organization grow with a specific goal in mind, sorry, we're little technical difficulties, but you don't have to take everything at once. And so you'll notice along the bottom from a foundational, enhanced, advanced services, these can very much parallel what we're talking about in today's discussion. And by that I mean, as you think about the next couple of webinars that we're going to have as we kind of talk about this really could be from concept to product, from product to first customer, from first customer to scale to a certain extent. And so I think there's a lot of similarities there. So as you have those growth goals in mind, there's some things that fundamentally need to be done. And then as you get more and more sophisticated in your marketing, we typically can find that organizations can do 2 or 3 things at any given moment. And then as those become operational and a little bit more commonplace, then we're able to add more and more. So we actually preach typically, don't try to do too much. Do a couple of things at the moment you're in and do them very well. And once we've mastered those, we'll move to the next couple that are your kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities. And so our goal is to help organizations eventually do all of this, but at the right time and in the right place, along with the kind of the growth that the folks here at TBC is talking through. So we'll reference this again as this kind of relates to some of the various stages that we'll be talking about in future webinars.
I would just add to that, Phil, I think you're spot on in terms of focusing and being able to say, do one or two things well. In addition to that, I would say know what you're good at and know what other people should help you with. For example, I'm not expecting an advertising company to come into a lab and figure out how to cure diabetes. I would also not expect an inventor that is researching and curing diabetes to be a great search engine optimization marketer. And so understanding that if either one of those are your next step, know who you should engage and when, because, and that's a lot of what our office does at TBC, is connect people with the right opportunities at the right times. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind as we go through this series and understand where you are, doing that assessment of where you are as a business, but also as an individual, and knowing when you need to ask for help from other experts.
Thank you. I completely agree with that. So we want to, as we think about kind of in conclusion, and really what can you do tomorrow, I'd love to have Spencer and Taylor talk through this. We wanted to make this as practical as possible, meaning as you walk away from this webinar that it's not simply a, wow, that was some nice, now I got to go back to my day job and actually get real things done. So you're going to kind of help bring us home here.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So I guess an interesting exercise might be for anyone listening, and I'll take this challenge myself, is to go online and search out Strategizer or Business Model Canvas. We'll put links to these in the slides. And take an idea or something that you're working on already, maybe you're quite a ways into development, and try and fill out that business model canvas. Try and see if you're able to identify at least one hypothesis or one guess for each of those 9 fields, and then put it away and come back to it a few days later, a week later, and see if those assumptions have held true. And as Taylor mentioned, as you look at the business model canvas, it should be pretty easy to see where the gaps would be if this were to become a company. And gaps would be the right people and partners and resources. And it's just as valuable to know where the gaps are than to know what you have nailed. Lastly, we would love to engage with anyone that's listening, either in the community here on campus at the University of Utah or from the business community. We are always looking for subject matter experts, entrepreneurs, investors, service partners, and providers. Our goal is to deliver impact from new technologies created here at the university, and we just can't do that on our own.
Yeah, I agree. I think putting that team together is critical, and matching that with the right opportunity. And so hopefully over the next three pieces of this series, we'll be able to step through the process, and we'll start next time with going from concept, if you've got an idea that you've come up with, to understanding what that product is and being able to figure out what your customers want, how to embody that solution and that value proposition into a product that they're willing to purchase as well. So that'll be the next part of this series, and we'll get our hands a little bit dirtier in terms of going through some of the nuts and bolts and how-tos on that process, so that as you go through that, you understand all the facets of the 3 stages that Phil mentioned. So we'll use some case studies, and we'll have some discussion in the next couple of webinars. But we look forward to working with you and engaging with you.
We're going to take just a quick break. Stay with us, though. We're actually going to switch over to Facebook Live, so if anybody wants to go to the Fluid site, we're going to be broadcasting the group live for the next Q&A section. So just give us a couple minutes as we set that up, and we will launch. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them, and we will try to address as many of them as we can. The first question that we had come in was just, who does the TBC serve, and is there an investment that is required?
Well, good question. So our initial charge of what our office does is to provide service to the inventors and professors here at the University of Utah to take their inventions out to the market. So we're initially serving the professors and researchers here at the university. And then when we step that out and go into the market, we're then using basically entrepreneurs, investors, the community as our customers as well. And so we're looking to engage with them to come in and take these new technologies and bring them to market. So we're looking for outside people outside of the university to come in and help us take these to market. In terms of an investment, it's at that stage, at an early stage when a new idea or invention is leaving and trying to get put into a startup, we don't require an investment from startup companies. In fact, we oftentimes will put some of our retained earnings into these companies to help the management teams that we've recruited get them off the ground. Definitely in a startup, you're going to need to go out and find funds to get it off the ground. We can't supply all of those, but sometimes we will make investments into these new companies that we spin out.
And certainly there's a time commitment, there's a time investment that you'll see with any new venture.
Excellent. That actually leads well into our next question. We talked a little bit about concepts and we talked a little bit about marketing. As a startup, it's often hard to invest in marketing. At what stage should you begin that process, and what is a viable amount that we should be investing?
I think as you're initially understanding your kind of proof of concept and filling out the lean canvas, understanding business models, that kind of takes priority. But as you begin to go to market, as you begin to try to get those early adopters, you could say that marketing is essentially going out and finding your first couple of customers. Now, that's not marketing broadly, but that's at least going out and doing some marketing and trying to attract individuals. So, that might be just more equity in terms of, sweat and blood and, hard labor. You might end up spending maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month to kind of get to that point. We do recommend as you begin to, from a personalization standpoint, go to a broader market, to get a website, to get a logo, to get some additional sales materials or pitch deck or one sheet or flyer, you might need to be investing, $15 or so. And then kind of in that next phase of, okay, we've gone to market, we've acquired the first couple of customers, how do we then grow and explode this? Then you might be looking closer to $30,000 to $45,000 to kind of make that next investment.
Good answer. The next question is, I have a product and I've gone to market with it. Am I still eligible to participate with the TVC?
It's a good question. Typically, we don't bring in inventions or products from the outside unless our office can actually, and the university can add value to it. So if your product or your company or your business, if you could add new technology to it that has been developed at the U or could be developed at the U, then definitely we can work together. It's difficult for the university to allocate resources to outside companies or startups without saying, look, we're going to be a good founder and we're going to add some value with some new intellectual property, some new products that were developed at the U. Otherwise, we're probably not the best suited partner in that sense, unless we can find a way where we can add value with some intellectual property or other technologies.
As a vendor, how can I participate with the TVC? Are there partnerships, or what other way can I collaborate with your group?
So if you go to our website, that's probably the quickest way to get to us, and that's tvc.utah.edu. And in there, you'll see an opportunity, or it's basically divided into academic and industry. And if you'll go to that industry page and click on the engine engagement form, that's the simplest way to begin the engagement with us. There's a short form that you can fill out and tell us about yourself and your areas of expertise, how much time you could commit, And even as a vendor, we would encourage you to fill out that form so that we can reach out and contact you. What that does is when we get a new invention, and if it matches your profile, we'll ping you and we'll let you know, hey, this looks like it might be a good fit. Do you want to come and help us with this?
The next question is, as a professor, how do I work with the TVC? Do I need to go to my department head, or are there any other restrictions with my participation with work?
Pretty common question.
Yeah, great question. No restrictions. It's probably encouraged, and if you go to your department head, they should encourage you also to do that. Going to the website and clicking on the academic side will put you into kind of the portal on our website as to how best to engage. If you've come up with something in your work and have an invention, there is a disclosure form that you would fill out. So you'd sign up for an inventor account and then be able to disclose your new invention through the website to our office. And as soon as you hit submit, that starts a process on our end of contacting you, working with you through this whole process. So if you have questions, you can email us, find our email and contact information either through the webinar or on the website. But if you go to the website, you can find the inventor portal that will basically guide you through how best to engage with us from the university and invention side.
Fantastic. And this wasn't a user-generated question, but just as we let everybody go, can you guys tell us what is in store in this 4-part series next, and when can people expect to attend that?
Yeah, so the next, there will be three more webinars. The next one will be the topic of concept to first customer. The following will be first customer to actually building that company, and then taking that company and really trying to scale it and growing it quickly. The dates for those.
So, and that's part of the RSP we'll send out to this group. I know that we have those scheduled out over the next 3 months. So the next one will be held mid-July, and then the subsequents will be both August and then September. So what we're excited about is being able to feature a company at that early conceptual stage and be able to talk through how a technology or a patent or a way of, improving business was applied to commercialization fashion, and what you can begin to do to see if there is a market to be had. And the folks here from TVC will be able to speak specifically to that and have some great examples.
And ideally, as we go through that process, if there are people interested outside of the university that say, I'd really like to see some of the technologies that are being developed at the U, they can also visit our website or contact us, and we can walk through that process even as we go through this series and say, here's a new technology. Is that in your field or in your interest area? Let's walk through and see if we can start a company up around it or figure out a commercialization strategy. So ideally, this whole series will allow us to educate each other on that commercialization process.
Quickly, just wanted to remind everybody that you can still contact us at the hashtags below. Again, I'm your host, Dustin Cederholm, and we will be back in mid-July. Look for the RSVP. All of these slides will be sent to you in a follow-up email, as well as the recording of this event. We appreciate your time today. For the panel and everybody else, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.